For nearly 2 centuries, the truth about one remarkable woman's life was hidden in plain sight, written in secret code, locked away in drawers, and nearly destroyed. Who was she, and why did her family try so hard to keep her story buried? To understand that, we have to go back to where it all began, to the green hills of Yorkshire, and a grand old house called Shibden Hall. Anne Lister was born on April 3, 1791, in Halifax, a busy market town surrounded by the rugged beauty of northern England. Her family owned Shibden Hall, an ancient manor that had belonged to the Listers for generations. They weren't extremely rich, but they were respected landowners, with enough wealth, connections, and pride to make their name known across the region. Anne's father, Captain Jeremy Lister, had served in the army. Her mother, Rebecca Battle, came from a well-regarded local family. Together, they raised their children in a world that valued tradition, respectability, and restraint. A world where girls were expected to be quiet, polite, and proper. But Anne Lister was never one to follow the rules. From a young age, she was clever, curious, and fiercely determined. She devoured books, loved to study, and was endlessly fascinated by science, history, and language. While other young women were learning embroidery and the piano, Anne was reading philosophy, practicing French, and asking questions most people thought inappropriate for a lady. When she went away to school in York, it became clear just how different she was. Teachers admired her intelligence, but her classmates didn't always know what to make of her. She spoke her mind freely, debated politics, and wasn't afraid to challenge people's opinions. Some found her strange, others intimidating, but Anne didn't care. She was simply being herself. In her 20s, Anne moved back to Shibden Hall to live with her aunt and uncle, who both adored her sharp mind and capable nature. When they passed away, she inherited the estate, a rare privilege for a woman at that time. Running Shibden Hall was no small task. The estate included farmland, coal mines, tenants, and business dealings that required constant attention. But Anne took control without hesitation. She managed the finances, negotiated contracts, and made improvements to the property. She was fair but firm with her tenants and meticulous in her record-keeping. Every penny spent, every repair made, every change in the weather, she wrote it all down. And Anne Lister didn't just stay home. She loved to travel, far more than most women of her time ever dreamed of doing. She journeyed across France, Switzerland, Germany, and Russia, writing detailed notes about the people she met and the places she saw. She climbed mountains, visited universities, and met scientists and intellectuals who shared her curiosity about the world. Everywhere she went, she carried herself with confidence, observing, learning, and always writing. But the most personal, most revealing part of Anne's life was something almost no one saw. From the age of 15, she kept a diary. What began as a simple record of her daily life grew into something extraordinary. Over her lifetime, Anne filled 27 volumes with more than 5 million words. Her diaries covered everything: her business, her travels, her emotions, and her most private thoughts. Some of those pages were written in plain English, but many were not. Anne developed her own secret code, a mixture of Greek letters, numbers, and symbols, and that only she could read. Inside those coded pages, she revealed a truth the world around her could never have accepted. Anne Lister was in love with women. In her coded entries, she wrote about her relationships, her feelings, her heartbreaks, and her dreams. She described her love with honesty, tenderness, and conviction, believing deeply that her feelings were just as real, just as natural, as any marriage between a man and a woman. The code was her shield, allowing her to be completely honest without fear of discovery. And while she kept her secret from the outside world, she lived her life with a courage that still inspires people today. Throughout her life, Anne had several close relationships with women, but one of them became truly special. Her partnership with Anne Walker, a wealthy neighbor who lived nearby at Crow Nest. Anne Walker was quiet and gentle, very different from Anne Lister's bold, commanding energy. But together they found understanding, companionship, and love. In 1834, they made a commitment to one another that Anne recorded in her diary as a marriage. They exchanged rings and took Holy Communion together at Holy Trinity Church in York, a symbolic act of union that they both believed bound them for life. Though society and the church refused to recognize it, to them it was real. Anne Walker soon moved into Shibden Hall, and together they shared their home, their lives, and their estates. It was a daring act for the time. Two women living openly together was almost unheard of in early 19th century England. People in Halifax whispered about Anne Lister, about her business dealings, her masculine manner, and her unusual clothing. She often wore dark coats, sturdy boots, and carried herself with a confidence people weren't used to seeing in a woman. Locals gave her a nickname, Gentleman Jack. It was meant to mock her, but in truth, it captured something essential about her spirit, her defiance, her strength, and her refusal to fit the mold. Anne Lister was determined to live by her own rules. She managed her estate as effectively as any man, negotiated directly with businessmen, and made decisions that shocked many in her social circle. She oversaw coal mining operations, made modern improvements to Shibden Hall, and expanded her property with gardens, stables, and new architecture, everything done with precision and taste. Despite the gossip, Anne was proud of who she was. She knew that the world didn't understand her, but she never apologized for living authentically. Her life with Anne Walker brought her joy, but it wasn't without struggle. The two women faced social isolation, disapproval, and constant scrutiny. Still, their love endured. In 1839, the pair began a long journey through Europe, traveling across Scandinavia, Russia, and eventually into the Caucasus Mountains. Anne was as adventurous as ever, fascinated by the landscapes and cultures she encountered. But during this trip, tragedy struck. In September 1840, while traveling in Georgia, Anne Lister fell ill with a fever. Within days she was gone, just 49 years old. Anne Walker was devastated. She arranged for Anne's body to be brought home to England, a journey that took many months, and had her buried at Halifax Minster, near her family home. Her grave can still be seen there today, a quiet memorial to a woman who lived so boldly and so far ahead of her time. After her death, Anne's diaries remained at Shibden Hall. Anne Walker's health began to decline, and she was unable to manage the estate. Eventually, it passed to other relatives in the Lister family. For years, the diaries sat untouched. Some family members knew they existed, but had no idea what secrets they held. Others suspected their contents and wanted them kept out of sight. A shameful relic of the past, best forgotten. Then, in the late 1800s, one of Anne's descendants, John Lister, discovered the diaries and decided to examine them more closely. With the help of a friend named Arthur Burrell, he managed to crack the code. What they found shocked them. The coded passages revealed Anne's romantic and sexual relationships with women, written in language that was open, detailed, and deeply personal. Burrell was horrified. He urged John to burn the diaries to protect the family's reputation. But John couldn't bring himself to destroy them. Instead, he hid them behind a wooden panel at Shibden Hall, where they remained concealed for decades. Time passed, and Anne Lister's name faded into obscurity. Her diaries became a family secret, whispered about but never discussed publicly. Generations came and went, and the coded words of Gentleman Jack remained hidden, gathering dust behind the walls of her old home. It wasn't until the 1980s that Anne's voice was finally heard again. A historian named Helena Whitbread began to study the diaries, patiently transcribing every line, both in English and in code. As she worked, the truth unfolded before her eyes. Anne Lister was not simply an eccentric landowner or an ambitious traveler. She was one of the first women in British history to write openly about her love for other women, and she had done so nearly 2 centuries earlier. Her words offered something the world had never seen. An honest, unfiltered portrait of a lesbian woman living in a time when such things were never spoken aloud. Historians were astonished by her candor, her intellect, and her courage. Those coded pages, once meant to protect her from shame, became a powerful testament to authenticity and self-expression. In 2011, Anne Lister's diaries were added to the UK's Memory of the World Register, recognized as national treasures of extraordinary cultural and historical value. Today, Shibden Hall is open to visitors from around the world. People walk through its old rooms, look out over the same gardens Anne once designed, and feel the echo of her presence in every corner. Her grave in Halifax has become a place of quiet reflection, where visitors leave flowers and notes of gratitude, small tributes to a woman whose courage transcended time. Anne Lister's story endures not because she sought fame, but because she refused to live a lie. She wrote everything down, the triumphs and the doubts, the love and the loss, because she believed that her truth mattered, even if no one else would ever read it. For almost 200 years, those words were hidden, silenced by fear, secrecy, and shame. But now her voice speaks louder than ever. Anne Lister's life reminds us that honesty is powerful, that love is timeless, and that courage can echo through centuries. She was not just a diarist. She was a landowner, a traveler, a businesswoman, a lover, and a pioneer. A woman who dared to be herself in a world that told her not to be. Her story, once locked away in code, now stands as proof that even the most private truths can change the world.